This video has been sponsored by Skillshare. For a limited time, use the link in my description to get a free trial of Skillshare's premium membership. I recently went through my video list and I came to the realization that whilst I have a MegaCorp overview video from when MegaCorp came out, which is quite some time ago, there is no MegaCorp Mechanics. So here we are! That's what we're going to be talking about today, megacorporations. Now obviously we're going to need to put some perspective into what megacorporations are. Think about your Wayland-Yutanis, your Tyrell Corporation, your By and Large, your LexCorp, massive companies that are basically countries on their own due to their massive output, as well as their vast production capacity, as well as the basically focusing on every single aspect of life. A real-life example would be the Hyundai Corporation or Mitsubishi, because they control quite a lot of market aspects. Samsung is also a very good example of that. So let's dive right in. Let's go and build ourselves a megacorp. Just for your interest, we are playing with all the DLCs enabled, mainly because the latest expansion, Federations, as of this moment in time, does add a bunch of flavor as well as necessary mechanics to make megacorporations work even better than they already do. So let's go and dive right in and create ourselves a megacorporation, because it is relatively straightforward. Let's just go ahead and create one. The most important part is that we immediately go to our government and ethics screen and click on the MegaCorp modifier here. Basically what a megacorp does is that it adds additional admin cap. Sadly it's a flat number, not a percentage, but it does increase empire sprawl penalty. That means that the admin cap that we're going to get is not necessarily going to be all that useful. So yeah, we're going to have to build either relatively tall or have a bunch of planets filled with bureaucrats in order to make things happen. Now thankfully MegaCorp does give us a whole set of completely unique civics, and some of these are rather interesting. Let's take for instance criminal heritage. Now criminal heritage adds a whole bunch of new crime inducing buildings. Yes, that's right, they have their own buildings. I do feel that they're a little bit underused sometimes. It's probably something we're going to talk about in a separate video, but still, let's move on. Brand loyalty is also quite good for that unity bonus. Franchising is also very nice to get less empire sprawl from branch offices. We'll get into branch offices later. Free traders, again, branch office value being increased is nice. Having media conglomerate, which is war exhaustion gain, being reduced. Basically you can go to war a lot easier. Private prospectors, which unlocks the private colony ship. We're actually going to use this one for this particular one because, well, let's put it this way, private colony ships allow us to do some really interesting things within the context of the game. Ruthless competition adds leader cap. I'm not a big fan of that myself. Trading post, which adds additional starbase capacity, which is always nice. Gospel of the masses, which adds a special building that you can build on your franchises, which allows you to build the Temple of Prosperity. Very interesting to mix that up together with the joys of criminal heritage. Indentured assets, which basically is the same as slaver guilds. It enslaves 40% of your population. If you really want to go down a slavery route, this is the way to go. Naval Contractors, which adds additional naval cap, as well as PMCs, which is basically an army bonus. Overall, I think that we are looking pretty good here. I would like to go for private prospectors because I really like it. And on top of that, I'm going to go for public relations specialists because it gives us additional envoys. What's very important for megacorporations is that they have good standings with other empires, so that they can get trade deals with them, and there's a whole bunch of stuff attached to that. If you don't have trade deals with other empires, you cannot put franchises on their planets, and that's where a big chunk of your resources are going to come from. Because of that, we are also going to be a xenophile because we want to get additional envoys plus additional trade value. Trade value is the name of the game when it comes to mega corporations. On top of that, we're going to be a fanatic materialist, just to add that robot upkeep modifier, as well as additional research speed, because that is always good to have. All the other stuff is not really all that important. Origin, you can always always go with whatever you'd like. Mechanist is nice if you want to go for synthetic evolution. Syncratic evolution is nice if you want to go heavy on slaves. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff here. The most powerful one is, of course, Shattered Ring, where you start off with a ring world and being able to crank out a ton of resources at the early game is going to be incredibly powerful, especially if you are a mega corporation. But for now, we're just going to go with Prosperous Unification, which is the default. Basically, we will get 4 additional pops up at the start of the game, as well as 2 additional districts. All the other stuff doesn't really matter. Governing and ethics, we already talked about that. Basically, it's the civics that are important, our authority that is important, and ethics that is important. All the other stuff does not matter. Feel free to have fun with that. Now, aside from our empire setup, there's a couple of things that we need to do with our traits. You'd never want to forget about your traits, so let's dive right in. Intelligent, de facto #1 because of the research bonus. Research is, in fact, still king as of this point in time, but we would like to get another bonus on top of that. Slow breeders is usually not a good idea, even though that can be offset relatively early on through technology. And, well, normally I would go unruly here because of the empire sprawl from pops modifier, but considering we are playing as a MegaCorp, that is usually not a good idea. Instead, we're going to go with non-adaptive because we won't have that many planets to start on anyway, and we want to keep our sprawl to a minimum, so not having to expand too much is a good idea. But it means that we have 2 points available. What are we going to do with those points? Well, we are going to tie in and synergize nicely with the wonders of trade value through Thrifty. But how did we get Thrifty? Why, of course, through Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people such as yourself. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in your creativity by learning all about the wonders of becoming thrifty. Now, how does one become thrifty on Skillshare? Well, there is an entire playlist full of workshops that allow you to learn about wonderful new things in the world of business. Such as this class that is very, very applicable to my experience, Pricing Your Work, How to Value Your Work as a Freelancer by Peggy Dean. Yeah, it's always difficult being out there as a freelancer and trying to assess your value of your product, and this particular class did help me quite a lot in figuring out what value would do. Because, to be fair, I am not somebody who has had the education to actually do this, and Skillshare brought me up to standard. Maybe business is not something for you. Maybe you want to get something out of videography or creative work. This is all available on Skillshare. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. And it's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. So take this opportunity and click the link in the description below, because for a limited time offer, you can get a free trial on Skillshare Premium. So here we are at the start of the game. Of course, we got our solar system like here, and then there's, of course, our capital world. Still, though, what are we going to do as a megacorp? What is our goal? Well, it is, of course, to dominate the galaxy and also make a metric ton of cash. You know, we're very reliant on our neighbors, which is one of the reasons that we took public relations specialists, specifically for those envoys, as well as a dash of xenophile to get even more envoys. Because of that, we start off with 4 of them. And we can use those to influence our neighbors and get the most important thing in the game to us, which is trade agreements. Tech-wise, is relatively straightforward. Always go for your research right off the bat unless you can get pop growth speed. Pop growth speed is also really good. And on top of that, getting additional research is always nice. It's a knock-on effect that slowly over time will build things up for you. And in addition, getting a construction ship going is pretty nice, especially if you can get those initial minerals up and running. Right now, we start off at plus 26. Energy is not all that important right now, so we're just going to find ourselves a nice little area to put a station down. Of course, we're going to need to inspect our leader, and as you can see, we have the space miner right off the bat, which means that we will have a reduction in station build costs. That's completely random. I just rolled really luckily here, and that basically means that all my initial stations are a lot cheaper than normal. Of course, we're going to need to send our science ships out, and we're going to be building quite a lot of these throughout because we want to build as many of them as we can because of the amount of scientists that we can get, but also because because of finding other alien species. We're not going to survey this initial area all that much. We are interested in our choke nodes, as is standard, so we're just going to go ahead and just survey over here, and our next survey ship is going to go over here towards this choke node. We're not really going to expand from this initial area at all. This is very much a tall build in general. We want to get ourselves constrained as much as possible here, because our Empire sprawl is going to be a serious problem. Thankfully, we have private prospectors, which means that we get a reduction from every system we own, but still, we're going to have problems with our districts. Now, once we can get habitats, we're looking a little bit stronger, but overall, we want to be very, very careful with this. Also, we're going to sell off all of our food, and we're going to sell off all of our consumer goods, just so that we have some money in the bank, so we can get the scientists that we want. Right now, what do we have here on our list? Sadly, we can't parallel scroll, which is a bit of a shame. We can get ourselves a statecraft one, which is nice to do statecrafty stuff, as in, you know, technology that's related to that. Industry, which is also very, very good. We definitely want to level that scientist as fast as possible. And we're just going to go and send this survey ship out in towards this direction. None of the other areas are going to be surveyed at the moment, because that is for later. Why for later? Well, we want to get the science bonuses first, in terms of getting anomalies. We're very constrained to our space, so we want to get the maximum amount of value out of our territory, which is why we are focusing only on these systems and not the rest around us. Now, because we have a reasonable amount of energy income, we can basically float our entire economy by just using our energy in general. So we can just build anything we want by just buying the minerals that we need, and if we need any more resources, we can just sell off the food and consumer goods. Now, the thing here is that we drop the Voltum Star Assembly. Always nice. The thing is, our first building is usually rather important. What do we want to do? Do we want to get alloys? Do we want to get science? Overall, districts are not really all that interesting, mainly because they will start adding up towards our Empire sprawl, which we want to avoid as much as possible. So what do we do here? Well, administrative offices, whilst interesting, is not something that we want to do at this moment in time. Alloys are usually quite good as well. Unity, also a good idea. However, I am more keen on doing research labs, just so we can get more science out. And that right there is rather important, because resources, energy credits, and stuff like that are not really all that important to us. Alloys to build ships, especially colony ships, are not all that important. Why? Because we have the joys of private prospectors. Now, there is a little bit of a thing that we can do with private prospectors, and we will get into that shortly. But first, let's go and survey these systems here, so that we have an idea of where we can expand into. And it looks like we have quite a lot of
planetary exploitation forecast complete.
The joys of this here choke node going on here. So overall, it looks like we're starting off in a pretty good starting area. A lot of choke nodes that we can play with. We are very much stuck inside a little cluster. Now, here is the time that we get to pick our first tradition. What are we going to do? Well, as a megacorp, you are very much stuck with other empires when it comes to your resources, especially trade value and franchises. Those are things that will come up later in the video. So, first of all, diplomacy is usually a good idea. However, specifically for the Federation, once you actually also buy the Federation's expansion, this will make a lot more sense. If you're just doing a normal walkthrough and you don't have the Federation's expansion, going for discovery is usually a good idea. Expansion is always nice as well because of a new life, which is an additional bonus where we can get pop growth speed. Overall, however, going for science is usually a good idea, mainly because we can get more value out of that. In addition, you know, we've got more scientists ready to go, and we'll get ourselves another scientist that we don't have yet, and then just move things around. Now, what is important here, as always, is we want to make sure that we have the right type of scientist on this on our technology. For instance, this is a industrial technology, so we should probably have a industrial scientist on this particular science ship, or at least this particular project. And then we can move scientists around where necessary. The scientists, for instance, can go ahead and continue surveying down here in this general direction and make sure that these choke nodes are all nicely surveyed, and we're going to do the same thing in the other direction as well. As you can see here, we are expanding quite nicely, and once again, we're not surveying this stuff at all. Our construction ship is done in our capital, so we can go ahead and get some additional territory directly through star bases. Now there's energy and there's trade value in here. Trade value and energy to us is effectively the same thing. We don't have enough alloys. Screw that. We have money. We can just buy whatever we need. So we just buy ourselves into the territories that we want through the insane amount of energy income that we have. Again, we can float our entire economy on our energy income, which is exactly what we want to do throughout this here gameplay. We are missing a scientist, so we are going to slap on a statecraft scientist because we don't have one of those yet, and we're just going to go ahead and survey things as things go along. Sadly, one of our scientists is stuck inside of an anomaly, which is a precursor one. We always want to avoid doing those too early on. It's not interesting enough for us to do those. We want to avoid doing any anomalies, and I accidentally hit go on those. Those will just hold up your scientists, and we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Anomaly detected.
So yeah, another precursor here. We're just going to leave that for now and move over towards this choke node over here. Now, sooner or later, you're going to need more pops, so going for the sprawling slums is always a good idea. It's 300, is it 300 energy? Yeah, it's 300 energy for a free pop, which is always nice, but it kind of puts a value on a pop. It's 300 energy for a pop. Interesting. Very, very interesting. 300 energy for a pop. Very, very nice. So, what do we know with that? What can we do with that? Well, because of our prospecting ships costing a certain amount of resources. So let's take a quick look here at our shipyard. Our private colony ships cost 500 minerals, or energy actually. That means that we can build a ship for 500 energy rather than the classic 200 food, 200 alloys, 200 consumer goods. And like I said, it puts a value on things. And if you have, for instance, the joys of the expansion tree, and you have the colonization fever, any colony will start off with 2 pops. So what you hypothetically can do is you can set up a colony for 500 energy, then move those pops over back towards your capital world, and basically you have pops for 250 a pop. And you can continuously do that process to really inflate your population on your capital world. And that's how you can really get around the issue of the joys of the district sprawl. And we will dive into that a little bit more later on. Architectural interest is always nice. We want to get survey speed to be set up to boldly go is always good. It's a nice starter there, and then we'll move along. And as you can see, this has now become the choke node for our southern region, and this will become the choke node for our northern region. So yeah, we want to make sure that we have this research speed bonus here, and then we have the right scientist applied if we have one of those, which we don't, so we're going to go and leave that one alone for now.
Log updated.
So as I illustrated before, we can easily buy ourselves just a private colony ship. It will be done in a year, and then send it over towards the world over here, and then set it up. It's incredibly useful to do this, mainly because, again, it puts a value on our pops. And once we've gone with the expansion tree as well, eventually, once we get to that point, we can very, very easily get a ton of pops, because, to be fair, private colony ships are a little bit broken as of right now, which is not all that great, but still it adds a nice little bit of value, and it's always nice to know that you can do this. And as you can see here, oh god, a hellish one with ancient precursors. We will leave that one alone for now to make sure that our scientists can level up a little bit before we get there. So one thing that's usually an interesting way of doing things is that there's a little mechanic where if you are surveying a system and you have set your ship to avoid and being evasive, and you still have stuff that you've set up for surveying down the line, what you can do is that once you've evade a hostile fleet, just not interact with the ship at all. It will automatically try to find a route back to where it needs to go, which basically means that you have free exploration going on there and potentially finding another alien empire, which is rather useful because now we've got this crazy route that goes all the way around trying to find a way to its survey point. And that's great for us because it basically means that we get free exploration and potentially the ability of finding an alien species. Now, obviously, we want to get survey speed improvements as well, and that's pretty much it. And our first planet is online, the planet of dislike, of course. And I've added a couple more labs to my planet because I can buy anything I want with my money. So sooner or later, you're going to find out that you have your first Ascension perk available, and what's really important to know is that your options are pretty good. Technological Ascension is usually a good idea to go for any gameplay. One Vision is okay, Executive Vigor needs some love. However, Universal Transactions is probably the number one that you want to pick if you've already made first contact with other empires, but it's still useful to have early on, because what does it do? Well, commercial packs will no longer cost you any influence to maintain. As you can see, we only have +4 influence anyway, which is going to cause some problems down the line. So yeah, Universal Transactions is incredibly useful for corporate empires to have. Sooner or later, one of the alien empires will do the following. They will reach out for a research agreement proposal, which is usually a good idea because you're ahead of the pack with research anyway. This gives us a nice bonus potential here, because what we are really interested in is the commercial pack. Now, right now, it's a problem that because we are too far away, we are half a galaxy away, but we can easily rectify that because we have money. And screw the rules because we have money. And because of that, we're just gonna buy some favors off of them. How many would you like here for your favors? 700 credits? Sure, let's do that, shall we? And then immediately we are going to go towards the commercial packs and see if we can... Oh, we're just a little bit shy. That is a problem, so we'll just get another favor here. Just the one, just to spicing things up a little bit, just to smoothen things. We can actually do a favor for a favor situation here. It doesn't really matter. What we can do, however, is get a trade deal. So that's what we're going to do here. And sooner or later, we're going to end up with a commercial pact invitation. And that one right there is pretty darn important. Why? Because commercial pacts is what keeps our empire floating. Now, we've gotten ourselves a commercial pact with the Spirian Empire. So what can we do here? Well, we can go to their capital world and look at their planets. As you can see, they got 38 pops here, which is great for us. We go to corporate, and then we can establish ourselves a branch office. But apparently we're lacking 2,672 energy credits. Alright, so the distance modifier is a bit of a problem. We're going to need to build some gateways there at some point. But yeah, we can build branch offices, just not yet, because we don't have the money for it.
We built something.
That's an excellent use of favors, isn't it? Absolutely. Once, however, if you've generated enough money and influence, and money shouldn't be a problem, because after all, you are a MegaCorp, money is never going to be a problem, it's time to head over towards a world that is not yours and see what kind of pops they have. 79, that is a lot of pops. So we want to establish a branch office over here. Basically what happens is that we will get money out of this. The expected generated monthly income here will be 28 energy. That is an insane amount, which is great. So we're going to go and place that down. But as you can see, it will also increase our empire sprawl by 2 because of the branch office modifier. However, it gives us access to the meat and potatoes of mega corporations, which are the corporate buildings. Now you may ask yourselves, what are these corporate buildings? Well, we've got all sorts of amazing little structures that we can build, and a bunch of these are rather important. Sadly, the corporate embassy used to be incredibly good because we could get diplomatic weight from economy whenever we wanted as our first building, but sadly, ever since the latest patch, you can only build one of these if there are 50 pops on the planet you have a corporate office on. However, the corporate assembly by itself is really good because it does give you that diplomatic weight modifier for the galactic community. Other buildings involve such things as food production, energy production, even more energy production, the Mercenary Liaison Office, which is really, really good if you want a large fleet, the PMC Office, which generates the wonders of alloys, minerals we can get Science +6, which is a reasonable amount, Unity, as well as consumer goods. Considering we're currently behind on consumer goods, I'm going to build one of those, and I'm going to build ourselves a private research enterprise. Now, we can always change these around whenever we'd like later down the line, and we can place even more buildings somewhere else if we want to, such as this world, which has 13 pops on it. Sadly, we don't have the resources to build one yet, but that is all in time. Building that additional corporate office will give us a significant amount of additional resources, and especially the corporate embassy will give us even more power within the galactic community once it pops up. And this all synergizes with all of the elements that we have in place. The wonders of our public relations, so that we can get a better trade deal even quicker. We can get the wonders of even a more trade value by getting the wonders of thrifty, and on top of that we are a mega corporation and we have the joys of the universal transactions, which means that our commercial packs no longer cost any influence to maintain, and our branch offices are in fact cheaper, which is great and is something that we always want to do. And from here on out, the universe is your oyster. Place branch offices all over the place. Get gateways inside of other aliens' territories. Get access to the L-Gate system and clear out whatever is inside. Subjugate other empires if you can, specifically the other mega corporation, and turn them into the wonders of the subsidiaries. Yes, you can go to war with other alien empires and turn them into subsidiaries, and they will have to pay you then 25% of their energy income a month. Always make sure that you have a black hole available so you can build a matter decompressor, and on top of that, any sort of a star that you can build a Dyson sphere around to get even more resources. Money is the thing that you're going to be using a lot, so having a decent amount of expenditure in diplomacy is good for open markets because of the trade value modifier, as well as the joys of insider trading to reduce the market fee. You definitely want to get the galactic market in your capital to reduce that market fee even more. And what you can get then? Well, a great economy that you can float with your energy credits. From there on out, it's just a case of getting more territory in terms of districts as well as new buildings, just so that you can get even more alloys in your pocket. Your biggest drawback right now is going to be your empire sprawl, so you will need to build planets with a lot of those administrators on it. Bureaucrats are very, very good, and you should definitely not underestimate their use. I hope this video was useful to you and that you'll learn a little bit more about mega corporations. I want to thank Skillshare for making this video possible, but also, of course, my patrons. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to do these videos on a frequent basis. We're going to go and wrap up this video here. As you can see, there's a bunch of cool videos on the screen right now that I specifically picked for you. I particularly like the one regarding the advanced tips and tricks in Stellaris, but in the meantime, we're going to go and wrap things up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves and, as always, each other.